Hey, good morning, church. A quick thought from today's one-year Bible reading. Let's go New Testament to begin with in Galatians chapter 5. And the Apostle Paul says that it is for freedom that Christ has set you free. Therefore, do not be enslaved again to the law. So he's re-emphasizing this point that is the main point of Galatians, is that don't depend upon your law keeping for righteousness, for salvation, because we're incapable of keeping the law. He says, there were some Judaizers who had come into the Galatian churches and they were teaching, you got to keep the Old Testament law. And they viewed the kind of the symbol or the culmination of the Old Testament law as circumcision. So you got to get circumcised. They practically had a circumcision fetish. They believed that Abraham was sitting at the gates of heaven. This is Old Testament Jews. And if you were circumcised, you automatically got a pass into heaven. And so you got to be circumcised. You got to be circumcised. And Paul uses that. And he says, look, you who are depending upon circumcision, you have fallen from grace. You have fallen away from grace. The law and circumcision, all that represents. That's a tough verse there in Galatians 5 for those who believe once saved, always saved. For the Calvinists out there who believe that God predestined some to be saved and you can't lose your salvation. Tough verse right there. You got to twist yourself into a pretzel to reinterpret that verse. You have fallen from grace. There's only one way of salvation. That's the grace of God through faith in Jesus Christ. If anybody goes back to try to trust in their law keeping and how well they keep the commandments of God, their own personal goodness and personal righteousness, you've fallen away from the grace system back into the law system, and the law system ends in death. Therefore, Paul says the only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. Faith expressing itself through love. So this is the new motivation for obeying God's commands. We're still obligated to obey God's commands. Of course we are. But we're doing that out of faith and trust in Jesus Christ and out of love for the gift of salvation. Totally different motivation than the motivation that says, I'm going to keep all these commandments perfectly. I'm capable of doing that. I'm a self-righteous person. Therefore, God must give me salvation and must let me into heaven. Abraham has to open the gates because I have been circumcised and I've kept the law. No. That's the law system versus the grace system. Don't fall away from grace. Trust or faith, those are synonyms, and love, that's the key. And back to Isaiah 31. Some may trust in horses, some may trust in chariots, but we will trust in the name of our God. God loves you, and so do I.